Everyone says the law keeps men safe. We know the truth. Sometimes it only protects the ones holding the gold. Today's story is about Arlen Knox and Corva Vale, where guilt turns into redemption, and a scar becomes the very thing that makes a soul worth saving. Out in the Sonoran desert, it all began with a single bullet, and a dying woman beneath a dead horse. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Blood carries a metallic sting sharp as a penny held too long on your tongue, and something darker trailing behind it. I learned that truth at 23, the night my shot tore through the chest of a boy, barely 16. Dead center. Clean as a drill at the range, like I'd trained for it, like heaven steadied my aim. He'd stolen a horse, that's all, just a damn horse. And when he reached inside his coat, my finger tightened before my mind caught up. I figured iron. It wasn't iron. It was a folded photograph. His mama. Corners worn thin from being handled too much. You ever bury someone who never deserved killing someone green and scared and trying to survive? Then you know that sound. That thin rattle when breath leaves for good. It never quits you. It clings to your boots, crawls into your blankets, sits in the bottom of every whiskey glass, stares back from the mirror, follows you straight into sleep. 3 weeks later, I rode alone into the Sonoran waste, my badge still pinned to my vest, though it felt less like honor and more like a stone dragging me under. I wasn't on patrol. I was running. That's where I found her. Laid out in the dust, horse stiff beside her, blood baked dark by the sun, buzzards circling slow overhead. The woman who would show me that redemption sometimes smells like powder smoke and sin. Maybe helping her was a mistake, or maybe it was the only decent thing I had left in me. She was near gone when I saw her chest move, breathing shallow, curled in the narrow strip of shade cast by her dead mount. Her shoulder was caked in dried blood, blackened under that pitiless desert sky. Even half-conscious, half-dead. Something about her made my hand twitch toward my Colt. She had that stillness, like a rattler coiled waiting. Her eyes opened when my shadow fell across her. Dark, worn-out eyes, the kind that had watched men die and stopped flinching. She tried for her revolver, her arm only lifted halfway before dropping back into the dirt. "Easy," I muttered, dropping to one knee. "I'm not here to hurt you." She let out a brittle laugh. "Then you're a rare breed." Up close I could see her clearly. 40 maybe. Striking in the way a storm front is striking, beautiful and dangerous. High cheekbones, hard mouth, a pale scar traced along her jaw, thin but deliberate. A man had put that there. I uncapped my canteen and held it to her lips. She drank like water was something she'd almost forgotten. "Who did this?" I asked. "Does it change anything?" Her voice scraped like smoke in a cheap saloon. "You planning to save me or just stand there admiring the view?" There wasn't fear in her tone, just exhaustion. That kind that sinks into bone. I pulled my medical roll free. As I sliced open the fabric around her wound, she studied me through heavy lids. "You're too young for me, boy." My hands stilled for half a second. "I'm old enough to know what I'm doing." She gave me a faint, weary smile. "That's what they all say." The round had passed straight through her clean entry, clean exit, but the flesh around it was angry, swollen. Infection was setting in fast. I kept my mouth shut, and my hand steady washing the wound, packing it tight, wrapping her shoulder while she studied me with those shadowed eyes that gave nothing away. Her skin burned warm beneath my fingers, mostly smooth, but here and there marked with scars, thin lines, puckered seams like a life carved by steel and bad luck. I told myself not to look at the slope of her waist, the slow rise and fall of her breathing. I told myself a lot of things. "What's your name?" I asked finally. She tilted her head. Does it matter? It does to me. Humor me. Silence stretched between us. Then she exhaled. Corva Vale. Most folks just call me the Widow Vale. The desert wind might as well have turned to ice. I knew that name. Every badge from Texas to California knew it. Corva Vale, wife of Thorne Vale. The gunman who'd left whole towns shaking until Bram Lockridge dropped him in the middle of a dirt street 2 years ago. Folks figured that was the end of it. They were wrong. After Thorne died, his widow didn't disappear. She stepped into his boots, took hold of the Vale Syndicate, and ran it sharper, meaner than her husband ever had. There was $1,000 price riding on her head. My hand drifted toward my revolver. Go on, she murmured, voice low, almost kind. Do what you're sworn to do. I'm about done running anyway. She didn't look frightened. She looked finished, like death was just another item on a long, blood-soaked ledger. And something in that surrender, deep, bone-tired surrender made my fingers go slack. You might think I was a fool. Maybe I was. But I recognized that look. I'd seen it in the mirror. We were both haunted, both sick of pretending the law meant justice instead of protection for men with heavy pockets. The border's 3 days north, I heard myself say. I'll get you that far. After that, you're on your own. Corva stared at me like I'd grown horns. For the first time, real surprise cracked through her composure. Why I didn't answer. Maybe I didn't have one. Or maybe I had too many. That night the fever took her hard. She muttered in her sleep, called me Thorne. When she came back to herself and realized it, she barked out a harsh laugh. Sorry. You remind me of a man who thought he was invincible. The shack we found was half-collapsed boards, warped and sagging, but it had 4 walls and a roof that mostly held. That was enough. I built a fire while Corva leaned against the far wall watching me, the way a hawk watches a field mouse. Even pale and burning with fever, she was something fierce to look at. Firelight slid over her collarbones, tangled in her dark hair. You ought to tie me up, she said lazily. I've got a bounty on me. What if I decide to cut your throat while you're asleep? I met her gaze across the flames. Would you? A long pause. No. Then I won't tie you. The quiet that followed was thick humming, like a wire pulled too tight. You ever killed a man, Arlen Knox? She asked softly. My jaw locked. Yes. How old were you, 23, and him? My hand stilled over the firewood. 16. Corva went still at that. The fire popped between us. Then her voice dropped almost gentle. What did he do? She asked. Stole a horse, reached inside his coat. My throat tightened. I figured it was a gun. Was it number? Her hand slid over mine before either of us seemed ready for it. Her palm was rough, warm, steady. Not soft like a lady's, strong like someone who'd survived. Then maybe you understand, Corva said quietly. Why I'm done pretending the law protects anyone except men with heavy pockets. You want the truth, that was the moment. Not when I first found her bleeding in the dirt. Not when I stitched her up. It was when she touched my hand and didn't flinch from what I'd confessed. When she saw the stain on me and didn't look away. That's when I knew I was already in too deep. That night we shared one thin blanket. The desert cold slipped through the gaps in the shack walls like a thief. Sometime past midnight I woke to find Corva shaking fever rising again from the wound. Without thinking, I drew her closer. At first she stiffened, like a stray dog expecting a kick instead of kindness. Then slowly she settled. Her back fit against my chest. Her hair brushed my chin. I felt every breath she pulled and every heartbeat thudding beneath my hand. Don't get attached, Arlen Knox, she whispered into the dark. I'm already halfway to the grave. I didn't answer. I just held on tighter. The next day we rode slow, cutting wide around main roads. Corva sat behind me in the saddle, Her arms looped around my middle. Her breath touched the back of my neck, warm against the dry air. It felt dangerously close to something tender. She moved with me naturally, like we'd ridden together for years. Her hands rested just above my gun belt, and I was keenly aware of every inch where our bodies met. Thorne Vale was exactly what the stories said, she told me as we rode. Charming. Deadly. She gave a faint smile. He could shoot the buttons off a coat at 50 yards and have you laughing while he did it. Her voice drifted off. But he loved me the way a man loves his favorite revolver. Something to polish, to display, to use. Then why stay? I asked. Because I loved him, she said simply, and because I was young enough to believe love was supposed to hurt. She went quiet for a while. The only sound was hooves in sand. After Bram Lockridge killed him, the boys figured the Vale Syndicate would scatter. They didn't expect you to take over. Her grip tightened around me. I was tired of being Thorne Vale's widow. She swallowed. I wanted to be Corva, just Corva, even if that meant becoming something ugly to do it. I understood that more than I cared to admit, wanting to be more than your worst mistake, more than the ghost everyone else saw when they looked at you. Toward evening, we stopped beside a shallow creek. I took the canteens down to fill them. When I walked back, I caught her digging through her saddlebag. Something inside knocked together with a hard metallic sound. She saw me watching and snapped the flap shut. Neither of us spoke. But I knew. That night we reached a border town and rented a room above a saloon. Only one she wasn't strong enough to sleep outside again. While Corva washed behind a hanging sheet, I sat with my back turned, staring at the wall. I listened to the splash of water in a basin, the soft drag of cloth over skin. My mind filled in what my eyes couldn't see, the arch of her back, water tracing down the line of her spine, the scars etched across her like pages from a book written in gunfire and broken promises. When she stepped out from behind the hanging sheet, wearing a fresh shirt with her dark hair falling loose over her shoulders, she looked almost younger. Not softer, but less armored. The fabric clung faintly to her from the wash water, outlining her shape in a way that tightened my throat. She moved easy fluid like a river that could drown you without ever raising its voice. She lowered herself onto the bed and patted the spot beside her. Have a drink with me, Arlen Knox. We passed a bottle between us. Whiskey burned down smooth and slow, pooling heat in my gut. In the dim lamplight, shadows played across her cheekbones as she studied me. Why did you help me? She asked. I tipped the bottle back before answering. I shot a boy, 16 years old. His name was Silas Pike. The words scraped coming out. He stole a horse to get a doctor for his ma, Elin Pike. And I put him in the ground because I was scared and too quick on the trigger. Told myself I was following orders. I swallowed hard. Truth is, I don't know if I'm still a lawman or just a man who hides behind a badge. Corva's fingers slid over mine. Gentle, unexpected. Then maybe you're just a man, she said. And maybe that's enough. We sat close shoulders brushing. The air between us thickened, charged. She turned toward me and suddenly her face was inches from mine. I could count the lashes framing her eyes, see flecks of amber buried in the dark. Whiskey and desert sage clung to her skin. You should leave, she murmured. Before you do something you'll regret. What if I won't regret it? I don't know who moved first. Didn't matter. Our mouths met, tasting of liquor and hunger, and something lonelier than either. Her hand fisted in my shirt. I pulled her closer, and she made a sound low in her throat that nearly undid me. Her kiss wasn't shy. It was fierce, starved, like someone who'd forgotten what tenderness felt like. Then she broke it. Pulled back. Her eyes shone not weak, just raw. Not yet, she whispered. Not like this. You deserve better than a woman carrying blood-stained gold. Before I could answer, she stood and slipped out the door. I heard her boots on the stairs heading down into the saloon noise below. I stayed where I was, sat on that narrow bed, lips still warm from hers, knowing I was already past the point of turning back. Call me a fool if you want. But when was the last time something felt real enough to shake you, real enough to make you forget who you were supposed to be? Morning answered with gunfire. 3 bounty hunters stormed the saloon, Dexton Price, Hollis Van, and Calder Sloan. Hard men, dead eyes, fast hands. Somebody had recognized Corva. Maybe Jeb Carrick ran his mouth. Word had spread. I was out by the stable when the first shot cracked. My heart seized. Then my legs were moving before thought caught up. I was already reaching for my Colt. I slammed through the saloon doors to find Corva crouched behind an overturned table revolver, smoking hair loose and wild around her face. One of them, Price, lay flat on his back, blood spreading dark beneath him. Van and Sloan were crouched behind the bar reloading. Her eyes found mine across the chaos. "Get out!" she shouted. Instead, I fired. Hollis Van jerked backward as the round punched through his chest. Surprise froze on his face before he hit the floor. Calder Sloan bolted for the door. He didn't make 3 strides. Corva's shot caught him square between the shoulders. Clean, precise. No hesitation. Oh, the room fell silent except for the ringing in my ears. Corva rose slowly, her revolver still steady in her hand. Her face was empty, cold. That wasn't panic shooting. That wasn't fear. That was execution. And in that stillness, I understood something clear as desert sky. She wasn't just a weary woman outrunning her past. Is this conversation helpful so far? She wasn't just dangerous. She was practiced. Killing sat on Corva Vale like a second skin. "We move," now she said, voice stripped of feeling. We rode hard, leaving Dexton Price, Hollis Van, and Calder Sloan cooling on the saloon floor. The desert swallowed the town behind us. About an hour out, her saddlebag tore loose. Something heavy hit the sand with a dull metallic thud. Gold. Small bars stamped clean with the Union Pacific seal. I hauled my reins tight. "You've been hauling stolen railroad gold this whole ride." Corva swung down and began scooping the bars back into the bag. Yes, why she looked up at me then, and for the first time I saw fear. Not of me, of something bigger. "Thorne Vale died owing $5,000 to Isandro Virela," she said quietly. "If that debt isn't paid, Virela won't just collect in coin. He'll butcher what's left of the Vale Syndicate. Men who stood by Thorne, men who stayed loyal to me. So you robbed trains." I did what I had to. Her voice wavered. "You think I wanted this? Thorne left me his name and his ghosts. Nothing else." She cinched the bag tight. "This gold buys their lives. I pay Virela. I get my people clear. Then I disappear." I sat there trying to square it in my head. "Why didn't you tell me? Because you're a lawman." Her eyes filled, and this time she didn't hide it. "And because you touched me like I was flesh and blood, not something to claim." For the first time in 10 years, someone looked at me and saw Corva. Not Thorne Vale's widow. Not a bounty. Something inside me gave way. I stepped down and cupped her face in my hands. "I see you," I said. "Every piece of you. And you're not carrying this alone. You're too young to ruin yourself over a woman like me." I gave her a crooked smile. "Maybe I'm tired of serving laws that only guard railroad coffers." She kissed me then. Hard. Urgent. Like I was the last steady ground in a collapsing world. The cabin near the border was the final stop. Tomorrow she would cross into Mexico. Tonight was all that stood between us and goodbye. She stood by the fire and unbuckled her gun belt. It hit the floor with a soft thud. Then her coat, then her shirt. Piece by piece armor falling away until she stood in nothing but skin and scars. Firelight traced her in gold and shadow. The curve of her hips, the pale lines etched across her ribs, the story written there in healed wounds. I couldn't look away. Didn't want to. "Stay," she whispered. "Just tonight." I crossed the space between us in 3 strides. Our kiss wasn't gentle, it was collision. Every hour of fear, every mile of dust, every unspoken goodbye crashing together. My hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped my shoulders. When we sank to the bedroll, it was with the urgency of 2 souls who knew dawn would tear them apart. Then the storm softened. Her hands came up to cradle my face. The kiss slowed, deepened. When I looked into her eyes, they were bright with unshed tears. "Say my name," she breathed. "Corva." She exhaled like the sound broke something open inside her. After that, we moved slowly. No rush, no pretense, like we were learning sacred ground by heart. I pressed my lips to every scar, told her she was more than the blood she'd shed, more than the debts she carried. She answered every touch, every whispered word, as if she'd been starved of tenderness for years, and finally found it. Her hands moved over my back and shoulders, learning the shape of me like I was something worth remembering. When I drew her closer, she held on tight fingers digging into my skin, and my name left her lips. Arlen. Not boy, not kid. She'd never asked, still she knew. And when the wave of it finally took her, it broke loose with a sound that wasn't just pleasure, it was release. 10 years of loneliness cracking open all at once. I gathered her against me, pressed my mouth to the tears on her cheeks, and let myself pretend this night might stretch on forever. Later, we lay wrapped together beside the fading fire bare skin against bare skin, our breathing falling into the same rhythm. Corva rested her head over my heart fingertips, drifting lazy circles along my ribs. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked quietly. "You ride south," I said. I turned back. My voice came rough. "But I remember this. I remember you." She brushed a kiss against my forehead, soft as a blessing. "Too young," she murmured. "But maybe the best man I've ever known." We didn't sleep, just held on while the fire sank to embers and the sky wheeled slow above us. Every second felt borrowed. We both knew it. Dawn came fast. Too fast. When I opened my eyes, Corva was already dressed. Saddlebag strapped tight. Gun belt buckled. The outlaw mask back in place. Hard, unreachable. Only her eyes betrayed her. On the cabin table sat a small leather pouch. Inside were half the gold bars and a folded scrap of paper in her rough hand. For Silas Pike's family. "You saved me more than once." My vision blurred. She stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, not turning around. "Don't follow," she said softly. "Don't come searching. Just live. Will I see you again, Silence?" Then she glanced back over her shoulder. A tired smile touched her lips. "You're too young for me, Arlen Knox. But maybe in another life." She swung into the saddle and rode toward the southern horizon, sunlight burning gold along the edge of Mexico. I watched until she was nothing but a shadow against the glare. Then she was gone. That afternoon I rode to the Pike farm. Arlen Pike answered the door. Grief had carved years into her face. I didn't speak, just placed the pouch in her hands and turned away before she could ask what it meant. Some debts don't balance clean. You just do what you can. I never pinned that badge on again. Instead, I rode west past county lines, past borders into country, where the law was thin and the sky wide. No promises, no absolution, just space enough to breathe. Sometimes when the desert wind rolls across open ground, I swear I hear her laugh riding it. That's how I learned justice, and mercy don't always share the same road. And how a woman the world called outlaw showed me what redemption could look like. So tell me, was I wrong to let her go, to choose her over the badge? Some would say I'm no better than the men I once hunted. Maybe they're right, but the law bends toward whoever's holding the gold. Corva Vale was trying to save her people, and me, I was trying to save what little of myself I had left. Love that burns reckless, choices that cut deep, the kind that stay with you long after the dust settles and the years stack high. Out here in the West, folks learn early that the lawful path and the right one don't always ride side by side. Sometimes you pick the badge, sometimes you pick the soul, and sometimes you walk away carrying the weight of both. If you've ever stood at a crossroads like that, you already understand. Ride careful out there, because every sunset across open country brings another man face to face with his own reckoning. Might be tomorrow, might be you. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West, stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal/disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process, but every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.